Welcome back, everybody, to the Peer-to-Peer Policy Pod. I'm Brian Morgenstern here with Sam Lyman. President Trump gets convicted and more popular at the same time. And tech billionaires are weighing in hard in this election. 80th anniversary of D-Day and World War II. Lots to discuss. Really great topics today. Where should we start?
Let's begin with Trump's conviction. So last week ended with a big bang as we got the news that Trump was convicted on 34 felony accounts. 34, which, if anything, shows just how much the prosecution was trying to milk that criminal charge for everything they had. So this was a headline-grabbing event, and it gave Democrats the talking point that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. Quite the provocative talking point, and they got it, but at what cost is the question. So my question to you is, what do you make of this verdict, and where do things go from
here? I was a little surprised. I figured there could be a conviction. I mean, look where they charged him. They charged him in Manhattan. They had a judge who obviously was ruling for the prosecution, practically, I mean, really boxing in the defense the whole time. It wasn't exactly a fair fight. So the conviction really wasn't that much of a surprise to me. What was a surprise was the backlash. It radicalized people who are not traditional Republicans, people who maybe were never Trump Republicans, people who were Democrats, or, people who would have never, ever dreamed of supporting Donald Trump in the 2016 election, started coming out of the woodwork and supporting him. In the 24 hours, he raised, what was it, over 50 million? I think they were up to 70 million within a couple of days. A third of those donors were brand new donors, had never had a donor record created through WinRed, which was the app that Republicans use to raise money. Democrats have something called Act Blue. Republicans use WinRed. Thousands and thousands of people not just being radicalized by this verdict enough to support Trump, but to go into their pocketbooks and donate to him immediately, like hammering that donate button. And when you have a third, Donald Trump's been famous for 50 years. He's run for president a couple times already. He has raised hundreds of millions, billions of dollars. So the fact that a third of the new donors, were brand new, means there are a lot of people that were pretty radicalized by this verdict. The Daily Mail published a sort of a flash poll that showed his favorability go up 6 points.
Wow.
Following the verdict. So I think the Democrats are overplaying their hand because it is so blatantly obvious. I think pretty fair-minded CNN legal analyst who is on the left, but an independent thinker, he said, look, everybody, I'm paraphrasing, everybody with eyes and ears, knows that anybody not named Donald Trump would have never been charged in this case. It says right above the Supreme Court, equal justice under law, right? Hillary Clinton had classified documents. Bill Clinton had classified documents. Joe Biden had classified documents. Mike Pence had classified documents, and only one person was charged. You can try to rationalize it all you want. Classified documents case. In the business records case and campaign finance case, pretty much the only other examples even remotely close, or maybe the only example that's even remotely close, would be the John Edwards case. Remember, John Edwards ran for, he was a senator from North Carolina, ran for president, was he the vice presidential nominee, I think?
For John Kerry,
For John Kerry. He was charged with a very similar scheme. And he had an affair out of his marriage and had a baby. And I believe they had used funds to, take care of that woman, provide for her, non-disclosure, all the rest. And he was charged with campaign finance violations, which was part of this case against Trump. And that case fell apart. He was not convicted. He did not have to go to jail or anything. And that's really, I think, the closest comparable case. And that one didn't work. So now all of a sudden, because it's Donald Trump, they shoehorn this case into the law. Statute of limitations had passed. They found a way around it. The only prior precedent failed. They didn't care. They went after it again. They had decided not to do it in the first place. Later, with kind of public pressure from the left, came back to do it again. It was just such a purely political case, so obviously political, that I think it opened a lot of people's eyes. So I don't know. That's a long answer, but that's my answer.
Yeah. And I love how you pointed out how obviously political it all was. There's three players here that I want to focus on. First player is Matthew Colangelo. He was one of the main prosecutors in the case. And just a year and a half ago, he was the number 3 person at the Department of Justice. And he left to go become a prosecutor in Manhattan. A lot of people.
An assistant district attorney. Okay. He was the associate attorney general of the United States. He resigned to become an assistant district attorney. Does that sound like a promotion to you? I don't think so.
There's only one reason for that. That was political motivations. And it'd be really interesting to see if there were some kind of communications between the DOJ and the White House and all of this, where someone from the White House potentially dispatched him to go take that job. Who knows what that communication would have looked like if it actually happened, but that's so blatantly political. It's not even funny. Then you have Alvin Bragg, who is a lifelong Democrat who more or less campaigned on this idea that he would go after Trump as the district attorney. He even bragged on the campaign trail that he'd sued Trump over 100 times throughout his legal career, saying, I know how to go after these kinds of people, and in his own words, keep them accountable. And then you have Judge Merchan, who is the judge in this case. It came out recently that he had donated money to President Biden in the 2020 election, and he donated money to a progressive get out the vote effort as well. And so you have the judge, one of the main prosecutors, and the district attorney. All of them are clearly in the tank for the president and the Democratic Party. Add to that the fact that you're trying this case in one of the bluest enclaves in the United States, probably the bluest enclave of the United States. And this verdict, from that perspective, is not even surprising. It was almost a predetermined outcome given the circumstances of the case. So the big question now is, how does this play out from here? We know that the sentencing will be July 11th, and there is the potential of jail time, which is even crazy to fathom. But how do you see this case playing out going forward? And what do you think the ramifications are headed into November?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and it's hard to predict the future. And it's look, the judge has obviously been hostile to Trump and the defense for the whole duration of this this kangaroo court. But so who knows? Maybe he will try to lock him up. If he doesn't, it's not out of the goodness of his heart. It's because he knows the political reality that would probably actually galvanize support for Trump even more, because people see how ridiculous this is. Categorizing. There is one other issue on the double standard. I mentioned the John Edwards case. That's even less important. Hillary Clinton had characterized as legal expenses those payments for the Steele dossier,
right,
to slime Trump and try to convince everybody that the host of The Apprentice had become a Russian spy somehow. And that was categorized as a legal expense. And the campaign was fined by the Federal Election Commission for that. You know whose campaign wasn't fined for the payments at issue in this case? Because the Federal Election Commission explicitly declined to issue a fine because they didn't think it was illegal. That would be Trump and this exact payment. So that just adds to this, air of illegitimacy with this trial. But to your question of what's going to happen, I don't know. It's hard to get into the mind of Judge Merchan. A lot of his rulings didn't make sense to me at all, so I don't expect the sentence to necessarily make a ton of sense. But I do think he will consider the potential ramifications of, if he throws Trump in jail, is that actually going to galvanize more support and not less? The judge seems to be, quite a political actor, and so I would expect him to consider that. And that's quite a sad commentary when you think about it. That what's supposed to be a neutral minister of justice is just going to be thinking about how it could help or hurt the defendant's chances in an election. Like, justice system's not supposed to work that way, but it seems to be working that way now. So It'll be right before the Republican National Convention. I don't know if that was an accident. Probably not. The convention is the following week. And so that sentencing is going to have a lot of attention on it. It's going to be very interesting to see how it plays out and to see what the Trump campaign does with it afterwards. If it's a harsh sentence, I think Trump actually can. He's like Highlander or something. He just keeps getting more powerful the more stuff they throw at him. So yeah, if it's a harsh sentence, then I think that actually helps him. If it's not such a harsh sentence, then it's kind of neutral. Like I don't think it actually changes the game in any meaningful way. So that's the way I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I see it the same way. If we know anything right now, it's that Judge Merchan is a political actor and he's going to see the blowback to this and adjust. If he planned to sentence Trump to prison, I think he'll change course now. Another question is, to what extent do Democrats realize what they're doing here? And to that point, Dylan, if you wouldn't mind playing us the clip of President Biden in a press conference, he was asked about this case and his reaction. I'll just say that it's a smile that says 1,000 words.
Mr. President, can you tell us, sir, Donald Trump refers to himself as a political prisoner and blames you directly. What's your response to that, sir? Do you think the conviction will have an impact on the campaign? We'd love to hear your thoughts, sir.
Should he be on the ballot, sir?
Weird.
That's so awkward.
Very strange.
So strange.
I don't know if it's a moment of senility or cynicism.
Yeah, or maybe a little of both. Senilicism.
Cynicism.
Coining that word. Give us credit if you're going to use it. So I guess it was very widely reported that President Biden had been complaining to Merrick Garland and the Justice Department that like they weren't prosecuting Trump fast enough. I mean, if you had heard something like that coming out of the Trump administration, that Trump was telling the Justice Department to go prosecute this person or that person, there would have been screeching and rending of clothes that the politician was interfering in the neutral administration of justice. Here we have exactly that, brazenly, with all these cases coming out, the E. Jean Carroll case, this case, the documents case, the Mar-a-Lago valuation case. Lawfare this is frightening, and people see it, and they understand that this double standard is egregious. And so I just think, and it's obviously political. It's obviously for the purposes of securing political power. And it's really scary because, like I said, if Trump had been doing this, first of all, if this had been happening to Democrats, there was a series of Democrat cases against the leading candidate for president. Right now, it just seems to be against Hunter, president's son, but not the president. But if the reverse had been happening and it was only in one direction, there would be people like calling for civil war right now. So the fact that it's just kind of normies, some people who would support Trump anyway, and now a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise supported him coming out and saying, this isn't fair. And if there's one thing America is supposed to stand for, I mean, it stands for a lot of things, freedom, justice, all the rest, but fairness is a big one. This is just so blatantly offensive to normal people's sensibilities. And that clip, that creepy clip, is not helping. And my hope is that, I want both parties to be competing for over the best ideas and helping move America forward. Democrats can't be happy about, or at least moderate ones can't be happy about that and about what's going on here. And I think they see that it's actually weakening their chances, not helping, because Americans want fairness. So, yeah, I don't know why he handled it that way. Maybe it was senilicism, but that was ominous. I mean, that was really scary and weird.
Very weird. And to your point, it's backfiring on them. The Trump campaign actually took that clip and repurposed it as a campaign clip shortly thereafter. The same thing with the mugshot. I think people thought that the mugshot would hurt Trump, But he looked so hardcore in that mugshot.
He turned it into an NFT and sold millions of dollars worth of it.
Right. Which it was the owners of that NFT who he held an exclusive event for a few weeks ago, where he came out and officially embraced crypto in explicit terms, which led to a whole string of events within the crypto policy universe that has completely reshuffled the political map. So they keep being their own worst enemies in a lot of ways. And what I find interesting is we saw the people's reaction to Donald Trump's conviction just a couple days after at a UFC event. He walks out to a roaring crowd of tens of thousands of people, and let's see how he was received. Do you mind playing that clip, Dylan?
Costa also with us tonight. 45.
Theo Vaughn, hilarious comedian.
In by UFC
Dana White,
CEO
president of the
Dana
UFC.
White. Donald Trump
You
is
think
in the
he was
building,
getting
and
in
the
the
former
octagon
president getting a
himself?
standing ovation from
I
the
met Dana
assembled
White at the White
masses
House.
here at UFC
Yeah,
302.
super friendly. He's a madman. I mean, you have to be creating an empire like this. But he could not have been nicer. He's a good guy. He's been friends with Trump for 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah, so pretty crazy welcome there at the UFC event. And you mentioned earlier, I think before we started filming, that this clip shows that he's the president of the people, right? What's interesting, though, is that he doesn't seem to be just the president of the people this election cycle. He also seems to be a president preferred by many billionaires, which is a remarkable difference from 2016 and 2020. So this month, David Sachs and Chamath from the All In Pod, they'll actually hold a fundraiser for Trump where they're asking people to donate up to $300,000 of their own money. So this is a fundraiser bringing in people with deep pockets around Silicon Valley. Add to that, you've got titans of Wall Street, people like Steve Schwartzman, the CEO of Blackstone, people like Bill Ackman, who have either endorsed Trump or are expected to endorse Trump very soon here. So all of a sudden you see all these billionaires breaking for Trump, in addition to working class people, middle class people. You've got both ends of the spectrum there. And my question is, why? Why do you think this is happening now? Why does the elite suddenly feel comfortable coming out in explicit public support for Donald Trump?
It's an excellent question. And I will give you a short answer and a more fulsome answer. Short answer is that big business generally supports whoever they think is going to win. So there's the little bit cynical answer. They see a trend in the offing and they want to be riding that wave because they like to win. They're competitive. They want to have, of course, some kind of say and influence in the policy process, because a lot of these guys have been, vocal about how U.S. policy affects their business prospects and the prospects of the U.S., succeeding and overall, but certainly their businesses as well. That's the shorter, more cynical answer. There's a longer and more fulsome, I think actually probably more accurate answer in this case. It was really articulated quite well, or a lot of the points were, by a partner at Sequoia Capital named Sean McGuire. And I think, Dylan, you have a tweet where he had put a long form answer. Oh, that's the crypto super PACs. The other one, we'll find it. It's okay. We'll find it. But there it is.
There it is.
So this is a gentleman named Sean McGuire. He works, he's a partner at Sequoia Capital, which is one of the biggest venture capital firms in the country. Highly successful, obviously. He served in Afghanistan. He, was part of, he had a very high security clearance. He was a part of our national security apparatus. He was generally, he leaned left. He was part of the culture of Silicon Valley, and he did a 180. He's supporting Trump now. And he said it's something he could have never imagined doing in 2016. And the reason I pulled that up is because he articulated a number of points, which I'm going to reframe a little bit because I think about it just slightly different. Political trends like this, which feels like a tidal wave, and it might be happening too soon, by the way, because the election's not, for another 6 months for Trump. But if they maintain it, then it really will be this kind of political trend I'm talking about. In like 06, 07, heading into 08, That was the second term of the Bush administration. The Iraq War was horribly unpopular. They had an open border. They haven't really worked out the border issues. There were sort of corruption and ethical errors happening throughout the Republican Party. There's a congressman caught having or trying to have affairs with congressional pages. The head of the Senate campaign committee had extramarital affairs and other ethical issues. You had it was a laundry list. I mean, it was just a bad time. The Republican brand was dead. It was very bad, and people were looking for change. I cite that example because this example I actually think is this could be more aligned with like 1980 when Reagan defeated Jimmy Carter, where you had like stagflation with the economy. He himself gave a speech on like the national malaise. He was asking people to conserve energy. The Iranians had taken American hostages, demonstrating weakness, profound weakness on the world stage. So let me get to today in the series of events that I think about like a snowball rolling down the hill to get us where we are today, and why these business leaders are starting to convert. They're opening their eyes and they're switching their allegiances. So it starts with COVID, and you had the overreach and locking people down and shutting off the economy, causing tremendous anxiety, people dying alone, isolated from their loved ones, kids being kept out of school for years, based, I think people are starting to see more on political power interests than on science, the science trademark. So that opened people's eyes quite a bit and made them more skeptical of government. The Biden administration seemed to kind of double down on restrictions, and they kept passing COVID relief even after the emergencies had passed. They passed trillions of dollars of additional spending programs, which led to what may be the number one issue today, which is crippling inflation. U.S. dollars lost a quarter of its value just in the Biden administration. So that's an economic issue that people are very upset about. Another flashpoint, the Afghanistan withdrawal. Now, for Mr. McGuire, this was personal for him. He served there. I know a lot of veterans who have been speaking out about this, saying that the withdrawal was disgraceful. It was not just incompetent. People died because of it, and it was all in service of a political talking point. That radicalized a lot of people as well. So you have COVID restrictions, which led to horrific inflation, the Afghanistan withdrawal demonstrating incompetence on the world stage. You then have that weakness in foreign policy carry over to the invasion of Ukraine, which I think a lot of people, Trump says it, but I think it's true. I think people believe it. If Trump were president, Russia would not have invaded Ukraine. We know this because they didn't for the 4 years that Trump was president. As soon as he leaves, they invade. You then have Iranian proxy attacks. We'll just call them what they are, starting a war with Israel on October 7th in horrific, awful fashion, which again would not have happened if Trump were president because he had bankrupted Iran. His sanctions had worked. The maximum pressure campaign had worked. Getting the funding from the UN organization that had been funding Hamas, getting that away, worked to maintain a more stable environment in the Middle East. The Abraham Accords, normalizing relations between, using Israel as kind of a spoke of a wheel to isolate Iran by having separate deals with other Arab states, many of whom want a more peaceful and stable Middle East. But Biden administration comes in, they undo all of that. We have more violence, not less. They keep saying Trump's going to start World War III. Well, we now have two new wars from the adults in the room. Thank you very much. I'll add on to that layer. Again, it's a snowball rolling down the hill. Trump had been building the border wall. He did remain in Mexico. He had supported the Border Patrol's efforts. And we had seen illegal immigration come down to a trickle. Biden administration comes in, reverses all of it. We now have, I see the estimate 10 million. Who knows how many people have been coming across the border? That has led to destabilization in our cities, services being stressed to the brink, crime going up. You know, a lot of people think it's just for, again, in service of a political power agenda. And it doesn't seem to matter if you're American or not. That's a profoundly upsetting set of policies and philosophy behind it. All these things are coming together. And then probably, I don't know if this would be the straw that would break the camel's back for a billionaire or not, but it certainly doesn't help in terms of, whether they would support Biden. This administration has been incredibly hostile to innovation and technology. We know it with Bitcoin. We know it with the broader crypto ecosystem, and the AI industry knows it. They've been trying to regulate before they even learn about these technologies, and that has created such a hostile business environment that is effectively chasing the next generation of fintech leaders out of America, where we have been the world's leader for a couple generations, and we want to maintain that leadership. And this administration is actively hostile to it, which is just against America's own interests. So this is a long list of things, but the point is, this snowball effect, when you combine it with the double standards and the injustice, it has given rise to this just guttural, visceral reaction where people know we are on the wrong track. We have to change it. And we had the A-B comparison of 4 years of Trump and 4 years of Biden, and they're saying to themselves, it was way better with the other one. So that's the snowball that's rolling down the hill. I don't know if it can be stopped at this point. It's many months till the election, but that's what I see happening. And that's why I see these billionaires opening their eyes and saying, oh man, maybe we need to change course here. Even Jamie Dimon said Trump was right about China. He was right about the tax cut bill. He's been right about he's right about the border. He's actually been right about a lot of things. He was right about natural gas in Germany. The US was, our secretaries of energy under Trump were LNG salesmen. They went to Germany and they sold them liquid natural gas, and they said, don't buy it from Russia because you're funding things that you don't like by buying gas from Russia. You should buy it from us. And they laughed at him. And then Trump left office. The Biden administration has put a pause on liquid natural gas exports. They bought it from Russia. They funded Russia's war with Ukraine. Trump has been right about a lot. And you might not like him. He might be rough around the edges. But these billionaires are starting to see, holy cow, the U.S. needs a change right now. And it needs to go back to what he was doing rather than what we're doing now. So I apologize for that 10-minute speech, but I'm very passionate about this. Yeah. So I wanted to get it all out.
Yeah, and summarizing everything you just said in 3 words, I think is Trump was right. I think that's why a lot of people who are shifting their votes this year are recognizing that he hit the nail on the head on so many different issues, whether it was foreign policy, domestic politics, immigration, innovation, whatever it may be. They realized that, okay, maybe his delivery was offensive to white women in suburbs across America, but he was undeniably right on so many issues. And so I think we're seeing a real shift in politics, a real realignment among the elite right now. In addition to everything you just said, I find it fascinating that this is not your typical election. This is not some choice between 2 old white guys from different political parties. This is a very distinct choice between a leader who is pro-democracy, pro-populism, pro-elections in Donald Trump, and a leader in Joe Biden who, let's be honest, he's a figurehead. Does anyone actually think that Joe Biden is making conscious decisions on a day-to-day basis? Does anyone actually think that he is the one actively driving our foreign policy agenda or driving the political agenda here in DC? No, they put him in front of a teleprompter. He reads a script that's fed to him by 20 and 30-year-old people in the government and people who have a much more radical agenda than the Democratic Party has historically been aligned with. And so I think people are waking up more and more to the fact that President Biden is a stand-in. He's a stand-in for the administrative state. The administrative state are the ones running the show under Joe Biden. And the reason why the incumbent media, the incumbent politicians, the incumbent businesses, all these legacy organizations are so aligned against Trump is because Trump is coming in and he's threatening that. He's threatening to be a wrecking ball for the establishment, not just in politics, but in finance and tech as well. And I think what we're seeing right now with these billionaires breaking for Trump is they're recognizing that there is a civil war among the elite right now, where if you can ally yourself with the person who is likely to win, your political and financial position will be better a decade from now than if you choose to back the wrong horse. And so what we're seeing, I think, is a lot of signal and not just noise with these billionaires breaking for Trump. They're recognizing that, okay, they're putting their finger to the political wind, and they see that that wind is blowing in a rightward direction at this point. And so they're shifting their allegiance accordingly. It's really interesting to watch this all take place. And at the vanguard of a lot of this elite shift has been leaders in crypto. So, Dylan, would you mind pulling up that Fortune article? We saw huge donations pouring from crypto last month. I'm talking $25 million from Coinbase, $25 million from Ripple, and $25 million from A16Z. So that's $75 million total that went to the super PAC called Fair Shake. So Fair Shake now, thanks to these donations from crypto billionaires, is one of the top 5 super PACs in the country.
They're actually up over 100 million in total donations.
Yeah,
They're up well over $100 million now, which is pretty impressive for a little industry like ours.
It's crazy. Yeah, I think their total now comes out to 160 million, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. So, I mean, they have a really deep war chest that they are taking with them to go into this next presidential campaign. And they're going to use this money to unseat anti-crypto candidates and to install people who are pro-crypto when it comes to legislation. So what's been fascinating about all this is that historically Silicon Valley and the tech sector has been almost uniformly aligned with the Democratic Party. But it looks like that's starting to change. And my question is this crypto GOP alliance, is this a marriage of convenience for the current election cycle? Or do you think that this is a lasting trend going forward?
It's a good question. It's hard to say for certain. I will say it can start as a marriage of convenience and could build into a better relationship or not. I think honestly, the choice lies between the industry leaders and the politicians. So right now, it makes sense because the Biden administration has been unabashedly hostile to the industry. They've made life as difficult as humanly possible. And so they have a choice between somebody who's actively trying to put them out of business and Trump, who says, I'm not going to harm you. I still like the US dollar, but, I'll let you do your thing and let the market decide, basically. The choice between those two things is not difficult. So for now, they'll certainly, line up behind the proposal that's not going to put them out of business. As for the longer term, look, there are some pro-innovation Democrats and pro-innovation Republicans, and there's some anti-innovation Democrats and some anti-innovation Republicans. So if the Republicans end up being more neocon in the future and less, I don't know what you call it, Trumpian populist, anti-war, whatever you want to call it. If it's more neocon and less populist, the crypto community probably does not get a good shake from Republicans because they are more Patriot Act surveillance state. They want to have their tentacles in your companies, more frequently. And so the community would probably backlash against that. If they end up more along the, civil liberties side of things, which again, there's some Republicans and some Democrats, good and bad on these very particular issues, they could drift in one direction or the other. For this election, it's a pretty easy choice. Like I said, I mean, this administration has effectively declared war on the industry and tried to put it out of business. So when you have that versus a guy who says, I'll let you, live and let live, you drift in that direction. It's not necessarily forever. And it sort of depends on the liberty versus security interests in terms of financial technology and surveillance and how those issues evolve over the next several elections that I think will tell us whether the Bitcoin and crypto community permanently drifts in one direction or another. It just remains to be seen. I don't know. That's my take on it.
Yeah. My sense is that those libertarian interests will find a lasting home in the Republican Party. It seems like the neocons have been expunged from the Republican Party with the America First movement, which I think is a good thing on the whole. And in a way, neocons have gone home to where they've truly belonged, which is the Democratic Party. A lot of people forget that neoconservatives actually started as Democrats, then went to the Republican Party when they found a new host in the GOP. And then when the GOP realized that the neocons are all about nation building and promoting democracy abroad, our own finances be damned. Well, they were quickly expelled from the Republican Party and realized that they didn't have a home there, and they were finding a new home in the Democratic Party. So to your point, I'm hopeful that this is not just a marriage of convenience, but an eternal marriage, one that can last forever. We'll see. We'll see. Regardless, we want to keep crypto a bipartisan issue as much as possible.
Yeah, I was going to make that point. I wish the industry didn't have to choose.
Yeah.
Like, I want both parties to value American innovation and freedom and peace. Like, these are all themes in like the Bitcoin and crypto world that I wish were not partisan at all. And maybe this election teaches our politicians that it shouldn't be. And I hope that's the case. We'll see what happens.
I hope so. Because everything you just mentioned, privacy, liberty, autonomy, the ability to set your own course in life, those aren't Democrat or Republican values. They're American values. Or at least that's what they should be. And so they shouldn't be partisan. And we gained some traction last month in the crypto world in helping Democrats recognize that these are universal values, something that people, regardless of their political party, should get behind. So we had 71 Democrats who came out and voted for a comprehensive crypto framework. That was huge. We had 21 House Democrats and 12 Senate Democrats who voted in favor of SAB 121 repeal. This bill would have allowed big financial institutions to custody crypto. It would have been a huge break for the industry. But interestingly, President Biden vetoed this bill just last week, and he put out a statement for it. Do you mind pulling that up, Dylan? Well, the statement was really interesting because the first 2/3 of it looked like they could have been written by Elizabeth Warren herself. Just came after the SAB 121 repeal bill, attacked it. But then the penultimate sentence talks about wanting to do everything we can to make sure that the U.S. is the home of crypto innovation. So there's kind of a schizophrenic tone to this statement from the White House and why they chose to veto this bill. So I didn't really know what to make of it. I think it was a case of the administration trying to have its cake and eat it too. But I'm curious what you thought of this statement.
So there was, I see what you mean about the last part where they actually want to work with Congress to ensure America's, leading on innovation. There's a clause buried in that sentence, though, that I thought was very telling, which was building on existing authorities, which that is code for we don't want any new legislation that would actually have clear guardrails for this industry. And that kind of tells you what you need to know, that this policy area is being run by Elizabeth Warren, and she has staffed the administration with her people to execute these policies. And I think that's who kind of won the day on this issue. They issued a veto threat well in advance of the vote. Actually, I think right around the time the House of Representatives were voting on this, well before the Senate was voting on it. So they kind of boxed themselves in, because even though they issued the veto threat, you still had almost 24 Democrats in the House vote for it. And then you had 60 votes in the Senate, including the Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer. They lost bad. That veto threat was a desperate act. But then after they issued it, they were faced with that choice of, do we follow through on our poorly conceived threat, or do we backtrack and then we flip-flopped on it? So, which is not really a good choice in either direction. So they vetoed it, which is bad policy and bad politics. The reason why even banks came around, and banks are no friend to the crypto industry generally, because the crypto industry sort of challenges their incumbency. They even came around because they had customers saying, I would like to have exposure to these assets. I want to learn about them. I want to start holding some. I would like my well-regulated financial institution to custody these assets on my behalf. And so the banks finally came around and said, yeah, okay, we have customers who want us to do this for them. They want us to offer this service, so we should allow it. And the administration said, no, in the name of consumer protection of all things. The consumers are like, I want my well-regulated financial institution to hold my digital assets. It's not very Bitcoiner of them who believe in self-custody, but this is America. It's supposed to be a free country. So this is why I don't even understand it from the perspective of the Biden administration. They're leaning on consumer protection as the justification. Well, the consumers said, protect me by allowing big, well-regulated financial institutions to hold these assets for me. And they said, no. And that's how this is not about consumer protection. It's about they hate, the industry because it's challenging incumbency. It's changing the way things work. In our financial system, it's making things faster and cheaper and empowering individuals more and generally taking, I think, some authority and surveillance tools and other power away from the federal government. And that's really the issue. Because when you look at their stated justification, it just holds absolutely no water whatsoever. And people see through it. And it's popular. This was a popular bill. It passed easily in the House. It passed with 60 votes in the Senate. So this veto politically made no sense. And from a policy perspective, was counterproductive. So pretty amazing. Pretty shortly after that, the House voted for the market structure bill, which would have drawn lines between the SEC and the CFTC and created a more hospitable environment for the crypto industry. The House voted for it with 71 Democrats, joining almost all of the Republicans. It was an overwhelming vote. So the White House is just on the wrong side. They're just on the wrong side of this from a policy perspective and a political perspective. And this SAB 121, telling banks they can't custody their customers' assets is absurd. It's embarrassing and silly at this point. So, but they keep digging a hole, and then they wonder why people want to vote for the other guy.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It's truly bizarre. It makes you wonder what constituency is the White House serving by vetoing this vote. They're not serving the 52 million Americans who own crypto. They're not serving bankers who donated to the Biden campaign, because even the American Bankers Association came out and said, we like SAB 121 repealed. We want this repealed. This is bad
even
for
the
us.
American Bankers Association endorsed it, which a year ago, or 2 years or 3 years ago, we would have never imagined happening. But that's how much, the tide has shifted and the market's matured. And they're just behind.
Yeah.
Way behind.
You just want to tell Biden 2020 called. It's not the same political landscape as it was back then. Crypto is here to stay. It's equally Republican as it is Democrat. And you're only shooting yourself in the foot here. It's really disappointing. And I think the Biden administration will be held accountable for this at the ballot box this November. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. So that rounds up our crypto news for the week and a lot of our political news. But of course, we always end with our grab bag section. And we have an important anniversary coming up. You want to speak to that, Brian?
Yeah, please. It's the 80th anniversary of D-Day and the Greatest Generation, saving the world from fascism. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Best Defense Foundation and the work they do. Delta Airlines, I think, contributed greatly to this. And Dylan, if you want to pull up a clip, I can tell the viewers what's happening. And they are going to visit the battlefields.
That's so cool.
And they're going to go to Normandy, Omaha Beach. They're going to see, they're going to visit the place where they put life and limb on the line as young men to represent America, to save our European allies, and to make the world a freer and better place. And they lost a lot of their compatriots. A lot of people died, and they went without fear. Well, with fear, certainly. I would have been scared. But they did it with bravery, great bravery, conviction, and they represented the best of America. They did what seemed impossible. And we should be eternally grateful to them. So a lot of these folks are 100 years old or more. And it's not easy for people of that age to travel halfway around the world, but it's important enough to go and commemorate the spectacular bravery that kept America free in the 80 years ago. So shout out to the Best Defense Foundation and Delta and others who came together to make this happen. And thank you, as always, to the World War II veterans. My grandfather was in the Navy in World War II. Very proud of that. I wish he were still alive today. This would have been, a really touching celebration, I think, in his mind. And I just think it's important for all of us to acknowledge that we Americans and even our European allies can be capable of the near impossible, when it's the right cause, when it's preserving human freedom, autonomy, defeating fascism and anti-Semitism and some of the other evils that were at stake in World War II. It's helpful to remind ourselves of, what we're capable of. And so thank you to everybody involved in that effort.
Nothing I can really add to that. June 6th is an important date on the American calendar. If you have a chance to rewatch Band of Brothers or Saving Private Ryan, I don't think any other piece of cinema captures what that experience must have been like than that movie and that TV series. Truly profound TV. And in addition to that, if you ever have a chance to go to Normandy to see the American cemetery there, it's a truly sacred experience. My grandpa, he served in the Air Force at the time. The Air Force was actually part of the Army back then, but he also served in World War II. And I'm just so profoundly grateful for his service and for all the brave men and women who fight in our armed forces. And thank you to all of you during this June 6th anniversary. I think that should probably about end us for today, unless there's something else, Brian.
No, I think that's about it. We should all be proud to be Americans and make your voice heard. Use your First Amendment rights. If we all don't talk about what we believe is common sense and right and good and just, then the bad guys win. So that's what we're here doing in the Rumble Studios. Remember to hit that like and subscribe button. We never remember to do this timely. Always do it as an afterthought. But don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitter at MorganSternNJ, at SamLyman33, and send us a note if you like what you see, or if you don't like what you see, or if you have suggestions for us. We'd love to chat with you. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.